Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode until the question and answer session of the call. To ask a question during that time, please press star followed by number one. Today's conference is being recorded. Any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn over the conference to Josh Finch. You may begin.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Josh Finch of NASA's Office of Communication. We're here to discuss NASA's SpaceX Crew-2 return from the International Space Station as a part of the agency's Commercial Crew program. Here to talk more about the return, I'm joined by Ben Fenn, Deputy Manager of the Commercial Crew program at NASA's Johnson Space Center, Joel Montalbano, Manager, International Space Station program at NASA's Johnson Space Center, Sarah Walker, Director of Dragon Mission Management at SpaceX, Junichi Sakai, Manager of the International Space Station program for JAXA, and Barbara Lucera, Team Lead at Houston office for ESA. We'll start with opening comments from our presenters, and then we'll take questions. First, I'll start with Ben.
Hey, thank you very much, Josh, and thanks for everyone for calling in today. Really appreciate your interest in the Crew-2 return, which is now scheduled in advance of the Crew-3 launch. Weather remains the primary driver for that resequencing of activities. So we're tremendously proud of the entire integrated team, the NASA team, SpaceX, Det-3, the Coast Guard, FAA, and many others have shown their ability to very quickly pivot from Crew-3 launch and Crew-2 landing to do the reverse, and they've done that in just a matter of days. This has been an unprecedented situation, switching from direct to indirect, but we're in a very good posture. Teams are doing it very professionally, and we'll be ready in time for our opportunities that we'll tell you about here during this briefing. Earlier in the week, we could tell the weather was going to be a challenge. We had a low-pressure system moving through Florida, causing constraints up the eastern seaboard. For those of you that were in Florida yesterday, you actually got to experience it. All those winds and rains were the challenge that we were looking at for our first two launch attempts, which would have been scheduled for today and tomorrow. We were hoping the weather might improve for Monday to allow for a direct handover, but that wasn't looking good either. So at the same time, we noticed a high-pressure system moving across the storm front, behind the storm front, and the likelihood of increasing favorable splashdown weather for Crew-2 in the Gulf. We asked the joint teams to assess and begin some early planning for an indirect handover while keeping the Monday launch opportunity open. So looking further at weather, that wasn't really going to be able to work out, so we've now pivoted to doing the launch, the landing of Crew-2 first, ahead of the launch of Crew-3. The Crew-2 vehicle remains in very good shape up on orbit. It's healthy and docked to station. The crew's in great condition. I think you got to hear them yesterday. They're excited to come home, and we're looking forward to having them back. So here are the numbers for Crew-2 return. We've got a primary undocking attempt tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern, with a splashdown about 18 hours later at a little bit after 7 a.m. Eastern on Monday. 18-hour return trip with a daytime splashdown. We'll be looking at weather again at undock -6, so that's still coming up here. We'll see if we can, if the weather gods will look favorably upon us. If not, we'll switch to our backup attempt, which is going to be Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, with a splashdown about 8.5 hours later at 10:33 p.m. That'll be a nighttime splashdown scenario. Both day and night recoveries have been certified, both have been exercised, and we're comfortable with either option. We're very much looking forward to seeing our Crew-2 crew back at home. Commander Shane Kimbrough with pilot Megan MacArthur, who fittingly is flying in the same spacecraft and even in the same seat as her husband Bob Behnken back on DM2. Also JAXA mission specialist Aki Hoshida and ESA mission specialist Thomas Pesquet. They've been adding to the U.S. spacecraft endurance record every day since they exceeded the previous record held by the Crew-1 resilience crew of over 167 days in orbit. By the time they land, Crew-2 Endeavor will have spent something on the order of either 199 or 200 days, depending on the day that we bring them home. Looking ahead to Crew-3, we have 3 launch opportunities next week. Those first 3 opportunities are November 10th, 11th, and 12th. Since we conducted the LRR some days ago, the Falcon, the Dragon have remained in launch configuration, as have all the ground systems. So we didn't break any configurations. All connections are still there, so they remain in a readiness state to launch. We'll have more for you on Crew-3 launch later in the week after the safe and successful return of Crew-2. And with that, I'll hand it over to Joe Montalbano.
Hey, thanks, Van, and thanks, everyone, for dialing in. You know, as Van has said, have been working extensively with the Commercial Crew Program, SpaceX, and our international partners to pivot to a landing first, followed by a launch in response to the latest weather conditions. You know, an indirect or a direct handover, I'll say indirect handover being what we're doing today, is something that we've looked at and we always look at and we're always prepared for. And so while we were planning, our prime was a direct handover between the Crew-2 and the Crew-3. The indirect handover was something that we have assessed, and it's not a brand new concept for us. It's something that the teams are well aware and something that we've been watching, and we do for every increment just to make sure we're prepared for something just like this. As Van said, you know, this crew spent it'll be almost 200 days, 199 days in space and 197 days on board the International Space Station with a splashdown Monday morning. They have performed over 300 experiments in utilization research, technology development, and low Earth orbit commercialization. Throughout the expeditions, we've had 7 visiting vehicles come and go to the International Space Station, and this crew has participated in 4 spacewalks during their expedition. So we're excited to be planning for landing and then followed soon after for the launch of the Crew-3. So with that, let me hand it over to Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joel. So as highlighted, we are targeting no earlier than Sunday, November 7th, tomorrow, for the first departure opportunity for Crew-2. We just finished our undock minus 24-hour weather gate, where we looked at all the weather across all 7 of our sites. As Ben mentioned, it's looking more favorable in the Gulf here, and wave slope, lightning, and rain are all continuing to look good. Those are all within our limits, but the wind speed for the first undock opportunity is still hovering a couple knots or a few miles per hour above the go limit. So what we agreed to do was proceed to the next gate, which is undock minus 6 hours tomorrow morning, and we will look at the weather once again, and if those winds have died down to below our go limit, we'll proceed with that first opportunity. If they're still high, then we have another opportunity about a day later. So we'll keep crossing our fingers there on the weather. And once we do find that favorable weather for landing, Dragon will obviously undock from the space station, come back to Earth, splash down off the coast of Florida, as I said, most likely in the Gulf. And SpaceX recovery vessels will be waiting there to quickly move in and retrieve Dragon and the crew. So for SpaceX, there are several firsts for this mission. This was Dragon's first mission flying 2 international partners to the space station with Aki and Tomat. And it was the first time that 2 Crew Dragons were docked to the ISS simultaneously. When this Crew-2 vehicle arrived, Crew-1 was already up there, and they were both at station for about a week before Crew-1 came home. And then Ben mentioned that this vehicle has been up there for almost 200 days continuously, but because it also flew Bob and Doug to and from the space station for their 63-day Demo 2 mission back in May of last year, this Dragon in particular will have clocked over 250 days cumulatively in space, so another record for SpaceX. That's really exciting. So also mentioned with the times in great detail that we're working towards no earlier than Wednesday, November 10th as the first launch opportunity of Crew-3, and we'll continue to monitor the weather for that activity as well. As always, we'll work really closely together with NASA and all the teams to make sure the hardware is ready to fly, and we're ready to bring a crew home safely and launch another crew safely to the space station. So we're grateful for this opportunity to partner with you, NASA and ESA and JAXA, and thanks also to the 45th Space Wing for your support in all these operations, and we're looking forward to bringing the Crew-2 crew home.
Thank you, Sarah. And with that, we'll go to Junichi Sakai.
Thank you for introduction. First of all, on behalf of JAXA, I would like to sincerely thank the NASA leadership, SpaceX, our international partners, and all the members who are working so hard for the Crew-3 launch and Crew-2 return, and continuing ISS operation under the tough COVID-19 situations. As reported earlier, we all, including astronaut Hoshide Akihiko Aki, are ready for Crew-2 return. Aki has led the Expedition 65 and 66 missions as commander for about 5 months. Succeeding Japanese astronaut Noguchi Soichi, Aki has completed several innovative missions, such as ISS EVA with ESA astronaut Thomas Pesquet as a collaboration between current commander and the next commander. The innovation of keyboard, support of installation of new Russian modules, and recovery from anomalies. And also, we JAXA, along with Aki, have conducted various activities to promote space exploration, national R&D, as well as the commercialization of low Earth orbit. We believe that these were all enabled through the excellent teamwork with the crew as well as the ground flight control team. I do believe all the crew has taught us with the importance of cooperation and mutual trust, and brought courage and hope for all of us against the great adversity we are facing on the ground. In addition, I hope our fruitful outcomes will further enhance our life on Earth and toward future exploration. We are expecting that Aki's experiences will be succeeded to the JAXA astronaut Wakata Koichi and Furukawa Satoshi's long-stay missions in the coming years, and contribute to further reinforcement of our endeavors toward the expansion of LEO activities, technologies development for future exploration, and enhancing international cooperations. And lastly, I wish the safe return of all the Crew-2 members and the successful launch of Crew-3. Thank you. I will hand it to the Barbara Nutella ESA.
Good afternoon. On the ESA side, we are looking forward to welcoming the Crew-2 back home after a successful mission. Following the crew return to ground, our team is ready to receive Thomas for his post-flight activities and his recovery in our facility at the ESA Astronaut Center in Cologne, Germany. This has been a very exciting time for us with Thomas on board the ISS. He has been part of 4 space walks. He has supported an impressive number of experiments on the ISS, several of which have been led and inspired by excited European scientists. We also find reason of pride in the fact that in the last month he has served as the commander of the ISS, taking over from Aki and passing his duty to Anton. He is the 4th commander of European nationality on the ISS and the 1st of French nationality. And we cannot be prouder of his leadership, his contribution, and we are extraordinarily happy that he had an amazing crew with him on board. We are happy and ready for the upcoming launch of Matthias Maurer as part of the Crew-3 mission. And with him, we'll continue our European and international science on board the ISS. As been mentioned, it's a pity that we couldn't conduct the direct handover. This would have allowed our 2 astronauts to meet in space, but we understand the circumstances that led to deciding for a different plan, and we support this plan. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank NASA, SpaceX, and all the partners for the transparent exchange of information, for involving our agency in the discussion and in the decision that has been made. We are looking forward to another opportunity for a direct handover between Matthias and Samantha Cristoforetti in the spring. And we are grateful for the opportunity that we have been given to collaborate with amazing teams from NASA, SpaceX, our international partners for advancing human exploration in space. So let's hope for good weather, and we will be ready for any circumstance. Thank you very much.
We'll now turn it over to the question and answer portion. As a reminder, you can press *1 on your phone to enter the queue, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. First, we'll start with Bill Harwood from CBS News.
Hey, thank you very much. I guess this is for Sarah. Weather aside, is Wednesday workable for a Crew-3 launch, no matter where or when Crew-2 lands, assuming it lands Monday? In other words, I'm unsure about what the turnaround time is from a SpaceX landing to a launch in terms of getting ships in the right position, et cetera. And then for Vin, I guess, what is the policy right now in terms of telling us where a Crew Dragon is going to land? I know there are some restrictions on specifying that because of the Crew-2 episode. I'm wondering when you can tell us exactly what the preferred site is, when and where. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks for your question. It's certainly been a conversation we've had with a lot of teams at SpaceX and NASA, and so a very good question. So given the return durations for both the primary and the backup undocking dates, they both would splash down on Monday, either morning or evening. And so that shortest time before our first launch opportunity would be about 2 days, and that is a supportable amount of time. We looked at the assets and the personnel supporting both the Crew-2 recovery operations and the Crew-3 launch operations. The teams and the assets are actually largely independent. There's a couple of folks that support both, and that gives them multiple sleep cycles to be able to transition from one activity to the next and be well rested. It also gives us a chance to do a quick data review from the downhill leg of the Crew-2 vehicle, and so we can do some initial inspections on the boat. We can look at the telemetry from the return portion, and we'll hold a Delta launch readiness review with NASA at L-24 hours to the first launch opportunity. So that's an opportunity to pause and look at the data and make sure that all the teams are ready to support the next launch opportunity.
Okay. Hey, and this has been, let's say, for splashdown locations, with 7 different splashdown sites, and SpaceX is a very flexible system. They actually, with the dynamics of weather, the various combinations of up to 7 potential splashdown sites, and then the need to protect the crew and the public and the vehicle during splashdown operations, we sometimes don't know until late. And there can be changes right up to sort of the last moment. So we've been hesitant to put those out publicly long ahead of time just because sometimes those could change. And, of course, as far as the actual locations themselves, again, we're just trying to make sure that the folks are protected and that they're not, folks without we don't want to expose folks to danger that aren't part of the recovery operations.
Okay, if I could just really quickly follow up, though, does that mean that wherever you decide to go Monday, assuming you come home Monday, that you won't specify which zone it is until they're in the water?
Hey, Bill, this is Joel Montemano. What we're going to say is we'll say either the Atlantic or the Gulf side. In fact, we're sharing that today. We're going to say the Gulf side. But due to trying to maintain the safety of the recovery team and the safety of the public, we're going to hold off on announcing the exact location until landing.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
And our next question is from Stephen Clark at Spaceflight Now.
Thank you. A question for Vin. Has the minor medical issue with one of the Crew-3 astronauts, has that been cleared right now? Is that no longer something you're tracking for a potential launch on Wednesday? And also probably for Vin or maybe Sarah, the undocking opportunities tomorrow and Monday, do you still plan to do the photo survey and fly around for those, or has that been removed from the plan, and if so, why?
Yeah, for the minor medical issue, yeah, we continue to monitor it. We have every expectation that's going to be all cleared up prior to the launch attempt, so no issues there. For the fly around, just based on a trajectory perspective, we've taken that new capability, which is actually really exciting, this new fly around capability, which is technically available for the first time on this particular flight and this particular Dragon and going forward, to fly around the space station and do inspections and so forth prior to departure. But due to trajectory, we've taken that off for this primary launch attempt. Primary landing attempt.
And if I could follow up, would it be planned for Monday if you do bump the undocking to Monday, or how would that work out?
Yeah, we're still evaluating that, with all the various combinations of landing sites, primary and backup sites. We're still evaluating that. It can fit in the timeline from a trajectory standpoint. We'll just decide operationally if we want to go pursue it for this flight.
Thanks.
Certainly.
And our next question is from Marcia Smith at spacepolicyonline.com.
Time issue. I thought Crew Dragon had a 210-day lifetime in orbit, and as you were saying, it's only been up for like 199 or 200 days. So I'm curious as to what the hurry is to bring them down before Crew-3 is up there, and as part of that, whether or not the fact that Mark Vande Hei is still going to be there, was that a factor in this? Because there still will be an American up there. So, for example, next summer when there's a chance that there might not be an American up there because there won't be one on the next Soyuz mission, would that have changed your decision this time?
Let's see, I'll take the front half of that, and perhaps Joel would like to take the Vande Hei part of that. Yeah, so you're absolutely correct. 210 days is the certified life of that vehicle. It does hit the 210-day mark on November 19th. We're generally heading into a period with, talking generically, as weather continues to degrade as we head into the winter in the northern hemisphere. Weather continues to degrade. So, weather's been such a factor in all these decisions so far. Looking forward, it doesn't get better as we go further into the month, and perhaps even into December. From a vehicle standpoint, and Sarah, if she chooses, she could elaborate. We don't know of any hard stops for 210. We've looked at that previously in our initial certification for the vehicle. So we looked at all aspects of soft goods and prop loading and so forth. So there's no hard cutoff there, and if needed, we could extend the life of the vehicle. We would simply need to work through all those details with SpaceX.
Yeah, those are good words, Ben. The 200-day limit actually came from a NASA requirement, and so that's what we've certified all of our hardware to. But we think the vehicle has sufficient margins, and we definitely want to complete all that homework and have NASA check over everything and make sure that they felt comfortable as well. But we think we're in a good posture, and we've got some time to bring it home. But as Ben mentioned, the winter weather is tough for both return and launch, and so we're just trying to make the right decisions to complete both activities in a timely fashion.
So again, is the fact that Mark Vande Hei is still up there, is that what is enabling you to make this decision? Would it be a different decision if it would mean no Americans were going to be up there?
So this is Joel. I would tell you that that definitely helped us and helped me feel more comfortable in the decision to land first before we launch. Is that a mandatory thing? We'll have to adjust it and take a look at each time what the different circumstances are. As you know, long term, we're looking to get a cosmonaut on the U.S. crewed vehicles and an astronaut on the Russian Soyuz. But I will tell you, for this one, it was definitely helpful to have Mark Vande Hei staying.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your phone to enter the queue. And our next question will be from Jeff Faust at Space News.
Yeah, good afternoon. A question for Sarah Walker. You mentioned the winds right now for a Sunday undocking, Monday morning splashdown are a little out of limit. I just wanted to clarify, is that sea surface winds or upper altitude winds, and what exactly is the limit that you're a little above right now? Thanks.
Yes, wind speed at the splashdown location, and I believe the limit is 7.5 knots for our primary, 2.5 knots for our alternate. I'd have to go confirm, but it's somewhere in that 12 mile per hour range, and we're hovering a couple miles per hour above that right now.
And our next question is from Russell Pounds at Pacific Rim Media.
Good afternoon. Thanks for taking the call. Calling from Alaska today. And this is for Sarah. We're doing some reporting focused on helping students and young people deal with self-doubt. Can you describe a lesson you've learned about facing and overcoming obstacles?
Wow, that's a great question. That's a hard question. Dealing with self-doubt and overcoming obstacles. I mean, all of these scenarios that we're talking about are of huge consequence, right? I've personally been in the industry about 10 years, and to be a part of making decisions where the lives of the folks on station depend on the decisions we make certainly weighs heavily, right? I think that doing your homework and surrounding yourself with a capable team, we have hugely benefited from the partnership with NASA and all of their experience in space flight, and so we're super grateful to partner with them on these missions and have them a part of every decision that we make. That certainly helps. So yeah, I would say build the right community, the right team around you, and do your homework.
That's great, Sarah. Thanks.
And our next question is from Ken Kramer at Space Up Close.
Hi, thank you for doing this, and good luck with the landings and launches. My question is about the 210-day limit. I'd like you guys to talk a little bit more about the homework that you need to do to extend this beyond 210 days. I mean, it seems like you would like to do a handover, and so why not do that? I understand what you're saying about the weather, but I'd like to know more about your discussions about why not extend it beyond if you're almost ready to do that, and how much work do you have to do, and who would need to make that decision to decide to go beyond 210 days? Thank you.
Yeah, I think maybe NASA can help me here. I think that initial limit was to bound the scenarios that they're looking at in terms of ISS utilization and when they want vehicles coming and going and bringing new crews and bringing existing crews home. And so we completed all of our certifications to that limit. We'd have some homework to do on all the systems to just verify that the qualified life, the testing that we did beforehand envelopes more. I am nearly positive that it does. We just have to go revisit all those tests and analyses and see how much more. But I think that the intent was to cover the current use cases of Dragon, and the goal was to have 6-month rotations of crews, of vehicles coming and going and performing science. So I don't know, Ben or Joel, if you have other words you'd like to add.
Sure, yeah, and I'll add a few. And of course, weather is, many of us have become very amateur meteorologists, but at least conversant enough in the terms, because it's been a really critical issue both for launches and landings. There's number one, there's a complex choreography of vehicles going to and from space station, of which this represents just a few just from the U.S., and of course, ISS has to juggle and manage the very busy spaceport. From a 210-day limitation, that is the cert limit, and of course, when you look at all the many thousands of aspects of certifying a vehicle, everything is certified, and anything that's got a lifetime has to be evaluated for a lifetime. In this case, that lifetime was for 210 days in most cases. So we'll be looking at things like performance of the solar cells, right? Solar cells degrade while they're in space. These particular solar cells are actually performing very well. So on every Dragon 2 vehicle that's come to space station, it's exceeded its certified performance, and degradation is less than what was assumed in the analyses. Propulsion systems have highly corrosive propellants inside, and so soft goods like seals can be a limiting factor. They can be in other spacecraft. In this particular one, they've shown no problems with exceeding the lifetime of 210 days, times a margin that we put on top for conservatism. There's the exterior tile protection system outside, which is exposed to all the full radiation of the sun as it's exposed up in space, as well as RTV. So there are just many different aspects, and those three that I mentioned are probably sort of the top aspects, along with any consumables that might be inside, like for instance the carbon dioxide removal or other consumables used inside the Dragon. So it's a very comprehensive analysis. We'd have to go back. Our teams have already started that relook. They've done an initial look. They're doing a relook. In this particular case, teams are primarily focused on that return. But for the future, we're always keeping in mind that 210-day life. One other thing to add is that, as Sarah alluded to earlier, these Dragons were all built and designed for up to 5 and certified for 5 lifetimes, right? So this is lifetime number 2 on its clock of, its odometer of getting up to 5. So it's still well within its cert limit in almost all respects.
Well, this situation is likely to repeat. So are you more likely now to look at extending beyond 210 or not? Thanks.
I would say generally not. There's a cadence of every 6 months, which is 182, 183 days. NASA would put about 30 days on top of that 182, 183-day cadence in order to get to 210. So in general, we'd like to launch and land as pairs in the spring and the fall of each year, because when you sort of look at the sweet spot of weather, that's where it is. If we get off cadence, then literally, if you look at North Atlantic weather, it gets very difficult to find good days to either launch into that environment or weather for landing as well. So there's just a lot more difficulty, and that's, I think, a similar reason why the Russians probably prefer that spring and fall cadence as well, and we're sort of positioning ourselves sort of in that similar time frame.
Thank you.
If you'd like to ask a question, please remember to press star 1 on your phone. Our next question is from Bill Harwood at CBS News.
Yeah, hi. Appreciate you coming back to me. 2 quick ones from me. The photo survey that you're deferring, can I assume that by not doing that, it brings in additional landing opportunities? In other words, not in time, but in place, additional deorbits to a different site if you ended up choosing that. That's number 1. And then number 2, on telling us landing zones, I'm curious if you guys ever talked to the FAA about the NOTAMs they put out, which they've listed 7 today with exact times, latitude and longitude, and all that on publicly available sites. So I'm wondering what if the goal is, we don't know exactly which one they're going to is the goal to keep the public away from this specific area, or if you have any thoughts about that, just that these locations are all out there. Thanks.
Yeah, no, and yeah, of course, the FAA is doing the right thing by publishing those NOTAMs. So the policy is that on the day of return, NASA TV does actually share the return date, the time, and the exact location. So I think that answers the first question of when are they formally released, and they're actually on the day of return. First question was the photo survey, and it has to do with the lineup of trajectories, and I'd have to get you a more detailed answer, but it really has to do with a mix of undock time, overall crew day, and then potential landing sites, right? So there's multiple constraints to sort of govern. If we're going to do a photo survey, that operation takes a couple of hours. Adding those couple of hours then brings in, or adding the 2 hours can actually take out some potential landing sites. And one of the ways they can take out potential landing sites is by violating the length of the crew day.
Okay, thanks.
Certainly.
And I would just add, too, that, we work closely with the FAA on those notifications. And the reality is, as of this moment, we have not made a final decision on which of the 7 will be our primary and alternate. We're watching the weather for several, and will convene again in the morning, and so that L-6 or undock -6 hour time frame when we will make final selections and upload trajectories to the vehicle. That's kind of along the same time frame when those notifications go out as well. So all of that is part of the same process.
Okay, thanks.
And our final question is from Marcia Smith at spacepolicyonline.com.
Thanks so much for taking a second question. I'm curious about whether or not you still have backup crew members when you assign crews to these missions, like the Russians do, and I know you used to do in the past. Because, of course, although weather has been a headache, a pacing item for this has been the minor medical issue for the Crew-3 crew member. So is it possible for NASA or ESA to substitute another crew member in a case like this? And if that isn't already the policy or the practice, is it something you're re-looking at?
So this is Joel. We do not carry backups specifically like the Russians do. At this time, we made a decision based on how we're gonna manage these flights, and to me, what we're trying to do is have the backups on like our Soyuz vehicle, where we'll have an astronaut on the Soyuz vehicle and a cosmonaut on our vehicles. But at this time, we're not planning on having a full set of backups. Now we have backups in the flow, but once you get down to the last few months before launch, you have a crew that's committed, and we don't bring, like the Russians bring the backup crew all the way to launch, and theoretically they're prepared to do a swap out very late in the flow. We kind of have that change is a few months out, where we can make a single change or so, but it's not something that we carry them all the way to the launch day.
So what does that mean for the future? So I have no idea what the medical issue is, but it's a minor medical issue. What if it was a major medical issue? For example, the Russians had to swap out somebody because he hit his eye against a branch of a tree or something, and so he couldn't fly, and I gather he's not going to be able to fly at all. But if one of the NASA astronauts had a major medical issue this close to launch in the future, what would you do?
What we would do is we would delay the launch until we got another astronaut who was ready to go. You can say, so for example, you have folks that have flown on the Dragon vehicle, on both the Demo 2 with Bob and Doug, as well as the Crew-1, that have suits ready and have the appropriate training, or the baseline training. So you would delay it such that you'd have to get them a suit fit, and then you'd have to be able to do any updated training to get them ready to go.
Have you come up with an estimate of how long that might take?
Yeah, I don't have that today, but we can get that for you.
Okay, because there's a possibility that you could end up in a situation where there would be no Americans on board ISS, right? If it was a long delay, weeks or months or whatever, to get somebody else trained.
Yeah, in this example, we have Mark Vande Hei, so we're not.
Yeah. It worked out this time, but.
And then in the future, we plan to fly on each other's vehicles, so that's how we're going to address that.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
And that's going to wrap things up for us here. With an undocking tomorrow, Sunday, November 7th, our coverage will begin at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for a 10:15 hatch closure. And then 11:45 p.m., we begin coverage for about a noon undocking for a splashdown on Monday, November 8th, around 7:14 in the morning. And with that, we'll go ahead and end there. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation in today's conference. Please disconnect at this time.